Imagine this. You stand on the edge of a vast amphitheater, its tiers rising above you like the concentric shells of a cosmic onion. A muted roar drifts upward, a chorus of disembodied voices, each clamoring for attention yet unified in an unspoken harmony. They speak in slogans fashioned from half-truths, their cadence hypnotic, luring you closer to the brink. There is no curtain, no footlights, only the relentless glare of a million unseen spotlights illuminating every twitch of doubt in your mind. You feel the air thicken, as if reality itself is becoming viscous, slowing your thoughts to the speed of molasses. What if I told you that this amphitheater is no mere figment of imagination, but a mirror held to the modern world, that each voice you hear is a fragment of a collective delirium, a grand illusion we have built brick by brick? Aldous Huxley, decades before our smartphones became extensions of our limbs, penned a warning so piercing it still echoes through the corridors of our consciousness. He foresaw a time when truth would warp under the weight of spectacle, when the multitudes would drift into apathy, seduced by trivial diversions and empty promises. Yet here you are, caught in the spotlight's relentless gaze. Your heartbeat sinks with the chanting crowd. Safety, they proclaim. Comfort, belonging. They offer you remedies for your anxieties, comfort pills disguised as news feeds, distractions dressed in the garb of entertainment, and you, searching for relief, take them one by one. Each swallow numbs a bit more of your discerning edge until, before you know it, you are no longer listening to your own voice, but to the reverberations of the amphitheater-esque chorus. How did we arrive at this precipice? How did truth become negotiable? A loose currency traded for fleeting sensations. What has eroded the bedrock of our shared reality, leaving us stranded on an island of curated illusions? Huxley's final, forgotten chapter speaks of a great delusion, a mass hypnosis powered by artifice and engineered distraction. He saw us centuries ago, drifting toward a sea of manufactured desire, paddling not with oars, but with the empty hulls of our own unexamined urges. There is an unsettling paradox at the heart of this theater. The more connected we become, the more isolated we feel. The amplifier of social media projects our voices across oceans, yet the echo we hear in return is hollow, devoid of the substance that once tethered language to lived experience. Likes and retweets stand in for empathy. Algorithms curate not just our content but our perceptions, narrowing the aperture through which we view the world. We have built walls of data around ourselves, walls that filter out anything incongruent with our beliefs, our biases, our cravings, and behind those walls, the amphitheater's roar intensifies. Ask yourself, when was the last time you encountered an idea that truly unsettled you? One that shattered the comfortable script playing on loop in your mind? Or perhaps you have felt that twinge of disquiet, but swatted it away as an inconvenient truth. You clicked forward another meme, another video, another dopamine hit, each one reinforcing the very patterns that keep you low. The irony is acute. In a quest for authenticity, we've surrendered ourselves to in pursuit of meaning. We're drowning in noise. Yet, there is more to this story than despair. In the next revelation, you will discover why this mass delusion is not simply the byproduct of technology or politics, but a symptom of something far deeper, an ancient current in the human soul that Huxley traced through literature, philosophy, and psychology. Beneath the roar of the amphitheater pulses a quieter, more insidious current, the yearning for certainty, for simplicity, for the comfort of not having to think too hard. It is a current that feeds on our fears, our insecurities, and our longing for belonging. Hold that thought. Feel the tension coiling in your chest as you realize that what you're re-witnessing is not merely an external spectacle, but an inner upheaval. The amphitheater's facade begins to flicker, revealing the scaffolding of your own mind biases, blind spots, unspoken beliefs. The next act will pry open the stage, exposing the hidden mechanisms that shape every choice you make, every belief you hold dear. You will come face to face with the psychological and philosophical roots of this delusion, and in that confrontation lies the first tremor of true awakening. So ask yourself one more question as the spotlights dim and the crowd's roar recedes. Are you ready to see behind the curtain? To step off the stage and into the labyrinth of your own consciousness? The door is ajar, the air beyond crackling with possibility and peril. What you choose next will determine whether you remain a passenger in the grand illusion or become an architect of your own reality. The amphitheater awaits your next Mouvand, the silence before the storm feels charged with destiny. Beneath the stage lights and the hypnotic cadence of the amphitheater, there coils a hidden force, a subterranean current that guides each footstep of the unwitting audience. This is not a conspiracy born of malice or centralized design, but an emergent architecture woven from the threads of psychology, philosophy, and collective myth. Here in the dim corridors behind the spectacle lie the true architects of our state of mind, our deepest fears, our hunger for certainty, and the seductive pool of narratives that promise us meaning without the burden of genuine inquiry. Carl Jung described the collective unconscious as a reservoir of shared archetypes, images, and patterns that shape our perceptions before we even draw breath. When you scroll through an endless feed of headlines and images, you are tapping into an archetypal language engineered to bypass your rational mind. The hero, the victim, the enemy, the savior. These roles resonate with a primordial chord within, demanding that you cast yourself in one part or another. You become either warrior or supplicant, but rarely the witness, rarely the questioner, rarely the one who stands apart and hears the machinery worry. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the last man, a creature of comfort and complacency, who would live out his days safe from pain, craving nothing higher than a well-heated room and a predictable routine. The last man does not gaze at the stars. He scrolls through the highlights of other people's lives, eating comfort vicariously. He avoids the abyss of self-examination and the risk of genuine freedom. Instead, he trades that freedom for the illusion of safety. But safety, Nietzsche insisted, is the cousin of stagnation, and stagnation, the prelude to decay. Aldous Huxley, who walked the same intellectual halls as these predecessors, perceived how technological progress would redefine pleasure itself, turning it into a tool of control. In Brave New World, he imagined a society pacified by Somaya, a drug that numbs inconvenient emotions and dissolves the sting of truth. Today's Suma takes the form of algorithmic amusements, short videos, endless trivia, dopamine-triggering notifications delivered at the precise moment your attention begins to wander. The machine does not need to force compliance. It simply offers you a gentle, almost affectionate persuasion. Relax, we've got this covered. Jean-Paul Sartre insisted that man is condemned to be free. Every moment of every day, you choose, however subtly, what to believe, whom to trust, and which narrative to inhabit. Yet freedom terrifies you, for it demands responsibility. It demands that you forge your own values from the raw ore of experience, rather than adopting pre-packaged ones. To escape this burden, many withdraw into ideologies that promise clarity and absolutes. Political tribes, brand loyalties, identity bubbles, all a refuge from the yawning chasm of pure freedom. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, spoke of the human search for meaning as the primary motivational force. But when meaning becomes a product to be consumed, the soul atrophies. You scroll meaninglessly not because you are lazy, but because you are starved for something real, and what the amphitheater offers you is only every like, every share, every retweet feels like a step toward significance, yet it leaves a hollower echo in your chest. Frankl wrote that those who have a why can bear almost anyhow. Today, many have lost the why and cling instead to the how, the mechanical sequence of clicks that simulates engagement. These philosophical undercurrents merge with hardwired cognitive biases. Confirmation bias, your tendency to search for and interpret information in ways that confirm your preconceptions, a precision instrument in the hands of unseen curators. Availability heuristic, overweighting what comes to mind. Quickly mean sensational headlines dominate your sense of reality. The bandwagon effect transforms neutral observers into zealots, simply because everyone else seems to be cheering a particular cause. Gradually, you stop thinking of ideas as mutable and instead treat them as extensions of your identity, immune from scrutiny. Look deeper, and you will discover how cultural conditioning fortifies the stage's walls. From childhood, you learn to prefer certainty over ambiguity, to seek belonging over solitude, to value external validation over the uneasy honesty of introspection. Families, schools, religious institutions all pass down scripts that make sense of the world in comforting but rigid categories. Even when these scripts break down, you clutch the remnants, sewing together your identity from the tatters of old beliefs. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you crave clarity, the more you outsource your thought to the amphitheater's chorus. The more you seek belonging, the more you conform to its collective rhythm. The more you avoid discomfort, the deeper you sink into the numb haze of trivial distractions. And while you drift, the architects of this spectacle refine their craft, learning which buttons to press, which images to flash, and which phrases to loop until resistance becomes unthinkable. But notice, this hidden problem is not solely external. You are not merely a victim of algorithms or political agitators. You are complicit in your own sedation. Every time you choose engagement over reflection, distraction over depth, you reinforce the mechanisms that keep the amphitheater alive. Your consent silent, unexamined as the fuel that powers this mass delusion. Now, feel the tension rising. You have glimpsed the subterranean currents that shape your perceptions, archetypes and biases, comfort and conformity, the hunger for meaning, and the dread of freedom. You stand at a crossroads. One path leads deeper into the amphitheater's comforting embrace, a path already trodden by billions. The other leads into the shadowed labyrinth of the self, where questions multiply and certainty dissolves. Ahead lies a revelation. The unseen consequences of this surrender, how the stage's illusions bleed into the fabric of your life, warping your relationships, your sense of agency, your very soul. But before you meet that chapter, hold a disquiet in your chest. Let the awareness of your own role in this dynamic unsettle you. The next act will show you how the hidden forces you just uncovered manifest in your daily reality, and why escaping the amphitheater's spell is not just an intellectual task, but an act of existential defiance. The question is no longer what is happening, but what will you do now that you know? Imagine waking one morning to find the world around you subtly, almost Your favorite cafe now serves wallpapered walls of branded slogans. The smile on the barista's face seems rehearsed, as if she's following a script written by someone who's never tasted laughter. You glance at your reflection in the window, yet even that mirror seems to have been retouched, smoothing out the lines of doubt you've carried for years. This is not a dystopian fantasy. It is the cumulative effect of the amphitheater's hidden currents leaching into every crevice of your life. First, notice how your relationships have shifted. Conversations once rich with disagreement and nuance now orbit within a narrow band of safe topics. You find yourself echoing phrases culled from social feeds, afraid that a single discordant opinion might crack the fragile veneer of belonging. When you meet friends, there is an unspoken agreement to avoid the abyss of complexity. It feels kinder, less risky, but beneath that civility lies a mounting emptiness, the silence of hearts afraid to speak their truths. Then, look at your own thoughts. Have you ever tried to recall an idea, something original that wasn't already trending on some platform? Your mind has become a sponge for the latest catchphrases, headlines and memes. Even private musings arrive, filtered through the amphitheater's lens. What will my peers think? Is this popular? These self-checks, once foreign, now sit like sentinels at the gates of your imagination, turning away any notion that falls outside the prescribed range of acceptable discourse. On a deeper level, neurological studies revealed that our brains adapt to the pace of digital distraction. Each notification floods your dopamine pathways, teaching your synapses to crave novelty over depth. You skim paragraphs before you read them, search for sound bites instead of substance, and forget the taste of silence. The more you indulge this craving, the more your you become a traveler, passing through life's landscape without pausing to absorb its vistas. Cultural conditioning exacerbates this drift. You were raised to revere progress, to view technology as salvation, to believe that more information equals more wisdom. Yet as data streams swell, paradoxically, your confidence in knowing anything solid crumbles. You hover on the surface of knowledge, unable to dive into the depths. Beliefs become fluid, shifting with the tides of trending topics. And you find yourself adrift, lacking the anchored convictions that once guided moral compasses. Economics plays its part, to the attention economy, that invisible marketplace where your gaze is the commodity, wages a silent war on your autonomy. Every platform vies for fractions of your consciousness, deploying ever more sophisticated tactics, personalized ads, micro-targeted narratives, engineered outrage. You think you are choosing what to watch or read, but algorithms have already decided what you will see. This asymmetry of power warps your sense of free will. The choices you celebrate as uniquely yours are often preordained by code. These unseen consequences ripple upward into the public sphere. Political dialogue erodes into binary skirmishes, fueled not by policy analysis but by emotional contagion. You witness polarization harden into hostility, compromise recede like a forgotten art. Civic life decays as citizens trade true engagement for performative activism gestures that generate clicks but rarely affect structural change. The amphitheater's chorus yells louder, drowning out any whisper of genuine democracy. Yet perhaps the most insidious consequence lies in the erosion of your inner world. As external noise crescendos, the quiet chamber of the self shrinks. You no longer hear the subtle murmurings of intuition or the faint tremors of unease that signal necessary change. Dreams become generic, following the plot lines the masseuse applaud. Fears become echoes of the latest scare campaign. Anxieties packaged as existential urgencies to be solved by the next product launch or headline update. Your psyche, once a fertile ground for original insight, becomes a recycling bin for stimuli already pre-chewed by collective forces. And still you press on, because the amphitheater offers small rewards to keep you tethered. A momentary thrill when a post goes viral, the comforting hum of consensus when many nod along, the relief of distraction when reality's sharp edges become unbearable. Each temporary reprieve strengthens the delusion, convincing you that the spectacle is not only tolerable but desirable. The trap tightens. Now feel the mounting tension. You sense the hollowness peeking through the facade, but every instinct tells you to keep scrolling, to keep watching, to stay within the glow of the amphitheater's light. You stand at the threshold, aware that stepping beyond it means confronting a world uncurated, unfiltered, and unkind. Yet the price of staying is the slow atrophy of your soul. This is the crucible in which your next decision will be forged. The revelation awaiting you is that the amphitheater's influence is neither myth nor metaphor but a tectonic force reshaping your life. The breach between your authentic self and the one molded by distraction has widened into a chasm. The question now is not whether you can see the fissure it has gaped open, but whether you will have the courage to leap across it. In the next section, you will discover the path into that chasm, a way to reclaim your attention, your relationships, and the very architecture of your inner world. You will learn of rebellions, old and new moments, when individuals chose to dismantle the stage from within, refusing the lullabies of false comfort. But first, breathe in the gravity of what you've just uncovered. Let the urgency pulse through your veins, and ask yourself, how much longer will you allow the amphitheater to script your life? You step away from the amphitheater's rim, heart pounding, as the weight of its glare begins to lift. Before you stretches a narrow corridor of shadow and half-light, walls carved by the echoes of your past acquiescence. This is the threshold of rebellion, a place where the familiar comforts of distraction give way to the raw promise of rediscovery. Here, the rules of the spectacle no longer apply. Here, you reclaim authorship of your own story. Imagine tearing down the branded banners plastered across your mind. It begins not with grand gestures, but with a single act of defiance, choosing silence over noise. In that moment, you feel the amphitheater's acoustics falter, notifications blink unanswered, the curated images dissolve into static. You sense the void beyond, and in that void, a spark. Thomas Merton, the mystic monk, wrote of the inner castle, a sanctuary hidden beneath the clamor of the world. He urged seekers to traverse its halls, room by room, until they stood at the very core of their being. You, too, can embark on such a pilgrimage, mapping the contours of your own mind, instead of bowing to the chorus outside. The rebellion demands a radical shift in perspective, from passive consumption to active inquiry. When you encounter a headline, don't merely click share. Pause. Ask, who benefits from this story? What voices are missing? What assumptions underlie the narrative? You train your attention like a muscle, flexing it in the direction of nuance rather than spectacle. Each moment of refusal, skipping a trending video, declining to retweet an outrage becomes a brick in the foundation of your newfound agency. Historical precedents illuminate the path. Consider Socrates, wandering the markets of Athens, poking holes in accepted wisdom until the facade of consensus shattered. They ridiculed him, they prosecuted him, yet his stubborn quest for clarity seeded Western philosophy. Or recall the French resistance during World War II, not an army in shining armor, but ordinary people who refused the scripts imposed by tyranny. They met in secret, whispered truths in hidden rooms, and risked everything to keep the flame of freedom alive. Their courage did not stem from ignorance of danger, but from an unquenchable belief that some things, dignity, truth, solidarity, worth the sacrifice. Today, your enemy is it wears the guise of convenience and the promise of happiness, yet the tactics you employ mirror those of the past. Selective withdrawal, discreet assemblies, quiet yet relentless questioning. Find your fellow travelers. They may be bloggers conducting thoughtful dialogues, podcast hosts, deconstructing narratives, or local gatherings devoted to reading books rather than scrolling feeds. In their company, you discover camaraderie, not born of shared grievances, but of shared purpose. To reforge attention into a tool of liberation. Mindset shifts follow. You learn to see distraction as what it truly is, a sedative for the soul. When boredom seeps in, instead of reaching for your phone, you sit with it. You let the mind wander into corners it has long avoided. In that fertile emptiness, creativity stirs. An idea takes root. A question crystallizes. A connection sparks between seemingly disparate thoughts. This is the opposite of passive scrolling. It is deep thinking, the kind Huxley feared would wither away under the rain of trivial. The rebellion also embraces disciplined solitude. It may look like early mornings spent reading, pages unbroken by alerts, or long walks without headphones, ears attuned to rustling leaves and passing conversations, not curated playlists. You begin to journal on for public consumption, but to excavate the bedrock of your values, your fears, your desires. Each sentence you write, without an audience, chips away at the empathy, erecting in its place a private sanctuary where your voice resonates with unfiltered clarity. But beware, the greatest rebellion is not simply an inward turn. It must radiate outward, transforming how you engage with the world. Speak in person rather than online. Debate ideas over coffee, not comment threads. Offer to listen more than you speak. When you encounter someone entranced by the spectacle, don't mock them, invite them. Share your discoveries, not as doctrines, but as open questions. Plant seeds of curiosity that may germinate in others when they are ready to question their own reflections in the digital mirror. As these practices coalesce, you'll notice subtle yet powerful shifts. Your attention spans lengthen. Complexity becomes a source of fascination rather than frustration. You derive joy from the tangible, the weight of a book, the texture of a handwritten note, the warmth of eye contact. The amphitheater spotlights begin to dim in your perception, replaced by the gentle glow of inner illumination. And in that glow, you glimpse the true victory of this rebellion, not the defeat of an external force, but the reclaiming of self. You realize that the amphitheater never held you captive with steel bars or threats. It seduced you with soft cushions and endless applause. By rejecting its comforts, you break free from the gentle prison of your own making. Now, as you stand in the aftermath of this first revolt, you feel a surge of power, yes, but also a tremor of responsibility. For rebellion is not a one-time act, but a lifelong practice. The amphitheater's architects evolve. New distractions emerge. Yet each time you notice the rustle of banners in your thoughts and choose instead the quiet path of inquiry, you deepen your liberation. In the next and final act, you will encounter the ultimate truth, a realization so profound that the echoes of your rebellion will converge into a single, crystalline insight. It will redefine not just your relationship with the amphitheater, but the very nature of reality itself. Prepare yourself, for the revelation to come will shatter all remaining illusions and leave you standing in a new world, raw and unadorned, yet radiant with possibility. Imagine standing at the apex of a mountain you've climbed alone. The amphitheater's roar now, a distant murmur in the valley below. The morning light fractures across the peaks, each shard dancing on the edge of perception. Here, in this crystalline clarity, you glimpse the ultimate truth, not a slogan to be memorized, but a living paradox to be inhabited. It is neither whispered by the chorus nor concealed in dogma. It emerges in the space between thoughts, in the still point around which all experience turns. The revelation is simple and devastating. Reality is not out there, waiting to be discovered. It is the ongoing act of your conscious participation. What you once took to be a fixed stage event's histories, identity shifts, and shimmers under the gaze of attention. Every belief, every sensation, every relationship crystallizes into form because you observe it, interpret it, and imbue it with meaning. The amphitheater's architects understood this, wielding spectacle as a sculptor wields clay, yet they forgot that the sculptor is also sculpted by the clay. The shapes you give the world feed back into your own psyche, forging the contours of your soul. Ask yourself, if reality is co-created, what script are you writing? Until now, much of your life was directed by rehearsed lines, narratives handed down by culture, technology, and collective anxiety. You believed you were a passive audience, but in truth, you were an unknowing co-author. Each glance at a screen, each retweet, each impulse to conform was an indelible stroke on the canvas of existence. The final warning Huxley left us is not that we would be overtaken by machines or rulers, but that we would outsource the very act of meaning-making, relinquishing authorship of our own lives to invisible editors who redact complexity and amplify fear. But now, as you stand beyond the amphitheater's reach, you see the opposite possibility. The power to choose attention is the power to create reality. Attention is not a limited resource to be hoarded or commodified. It is a luminous force, like a lens focusing sunlight into transformative fire. Where you direct it, patterns emerge. Where you withdraw it, illusions dissolve. The final, most powerful realization is that this creative spark, this sacred capacity to participate, resides at the heart of your being. Philosophers have called this realization radical, the understanding that consciousness and world core. Mystic traditions have spoken of it as the witness, the silent awareness before thought. Modern psychology labels it metacognition, the capacity to observe your own mental processes. Across these languages, the message is the same. You are both actor and stage, observer and observed. The boundary dissolves, and in that dissolution, freedom is born. Consider what this means for your everyday life. When you feel the tug of a sensational headline, remember, you have the power to choose your lens. You can scrutinize its source, trace the threads of its narrative, or simply release it into the void of When emotions arise, a surge of anger, a pang of envy, recognize them as passing weather in the sky of consciousness, not as immutable truths. When relationships strain under the weight of projection and expectation, practice seeing the other as fellow co-creators rather than adversaries or props in your story. This is not passive acceptance, but radical engagement. To live this truth is to become an intentional artist of attention. It is to shape the contours of your experience with mindful precision. It is to see that joy and suffering, victory and failure are not objective states, but the dialectic produced by your own active perception. And with that understanding comes a profound responsibility. Every moment is an opportunity to sculpt reality toward wisdom, compassion, and depth. Huxley's final warning was not a promise of doom, but an invitation to awakening. He feared we would drift into a somnambulate stupor, lulled by trivialities into complicity with our own impulse. Yet within his caution lies a luminous key. The same faculties we serve: imagination, critical inquiry, the very keys to our emancipation. The ultimate truth reveals that the amphitheater, no matter how grand, remains an image in the theater of mind. You can turn the spotlight inward and find an infinite, uncurated domain waiting for exploration. As you descend the mountain and step back into the world, carry this revelation like a glowing ember in your chest. Let it inform your choices, transform your habits, and guide your interactions. The amphitheater will still thrum with noise, but you will no longer be swept away. You will stand as both creator and creation, free to shape each moment with deliberate gaze. And so, the final scene unfolds, not a dramatic climax, but a quiet return to the simple act of seeing, truly seeing the world and yourself, moment by moment. In that seeing, you find the paradox of existence, that the observer and the observed are one, and in their union lies the canvas upon which all life paints its meaning. This is your inheritance, your responsibility, your liberation. May you hold it with courage and grace, crafting from this truth a life that transcends every stage, every script, every fleeting illusion.